Looking for best casinos with individual bonuses after registration? Go to topcasins.com website. It has collected best proven casinos with individual bonuses for the players. Do you like playing in a casino? With topcasins.com, you will definitely play safe. The link is in the description below.
So I've talked a lot about Sweden on this channel. As a matter of fact, I have done like 15 videos at least around the country itself. I've talked about how great the country is in terms of its power, and I've talked about at least 5 videos of unique facts about it. As well, I've also done a lot of videos about military divisions. I've talked about, the Navy, the Air Force, even the Saab Gripen itself. But recently here on the channel, I did a poll to ask you guys what of the 3 different types of content that you guys wanted to see. And a lot of you guys were really interested in the battles around the particular countries that we talked about. So with that, we're going to kind of slide into it, and we're going to look at the top 10 battles that Sweden was a part of. By the way, guys, my name is Dave Wapple, and before I get into this video, I just want to let you guys know that this is continuing to add to our Sweden playlist. I'm going to put it throughout the video, so keep an eye out for the cards. It's also going to be in the description box below and at the end of the video as well, so, we can wait till that. And overall, if you just like what we're doing and you want more videos around this topic, just hit that like button so I know you guys want them. Now, within that, we're going to dive into the top 10 that I chose. Now, for me, I didn't just pick casualties. I also picked how wars influenced the world around them, and also how it changed Sweden as a whole. And to start it all off, when we look at these particular conflicts, I just gotta say, Sweden has been in at least 51 wars. Now, keep in mind, that is a rough estimate, and that is throughout a majority of its history, I should say. And as a matter of fact, the last offensive war that Sweden ever took part of was in 1814. And unfortunately, when I say 51, I know there's a lot more than that because, for example, during the Viking period, there's just not a lot of information during that time. But with that, let's take a look at the first one, and that is the Swedish Crusades to Finland. What makes this one really interesting, now, it's not really just one war because there were actually 3 Crusades to Finland that Sweden, took part in. The first one happened somewhere between 1150 AD, and the second one was 1249 to 1250 AD, while the third one happened in 1293. Now, with the first one, there's really not a lot of data on this at all. As a matter of fact, it's more or less a myth than anything else. But however, it is suggested that this was the first time that the Swedes attempted to convert the pagan Finns into Christianity. This, of course, is linked to the myth of Eric of Sweden, who apparently led the conquer, and of course, when Finns refused, they fought them with swords. And as for the second that happened in the mid of the 13th century, of course, it is also very debatable, as it was Sweden against the Tavastians, which were basically a people within Finland. The third one was Sweden against the Karelians, which again was another group of people within Finland. This one, of course, is very famous because it's part of the Erik Chronicle, which is the oldest chronicle from Sweden. And they stated that within the Third Crusade, they managed to take 1400s of Karelia. Don't ask me what that actually means. From my understanding, 100th is a section of land. It's not actually specific as to what it meant. It could be, 1400 sections of hay, 1400 fields. It's not quite on the nose of accuracy. Number 2, skipping over a lot of the conflicts that happened within the 15th century, you got the good old-fashioned Dano-Swedish Wars. These ones were nuts, and I mean, literally, how do I sum these up? Because a lot of conflicts had Sweden versus the Danish and Norway. It was insane. They basically hated each other, and you thought the Russians and the Americans were bad enough. These guys were like, boom. And side note, they say that there is at least 11 wars in history between these two nations. And that is just kind of spitballing it because some people say there was actually 13, 14, or even more. Now, these happened between the years of 1470 to at least the 1830s. And with these major ones, the first major Dano-Swedish War was from 1470 to 71, with the second one happening in 1501 to 1512, and again in 1657 to 1660, and a fourth one in 1808 to 1809. There were many different reasons why these wars happened in the first place. For example, in the last one in 1808, you had Denmark and Norway that were allied with France, and you had Sweden that was allied with the UK. And of course, that created a lot of problems out of the Napoleonic War. Also within this, there was number 3, which was the Torstenson War, which happened from 1643 to 1645, in which Denmark and Sweden ended up signing the Second Treaty of Brömsebro, in which Denmark lost its territories but tried to gain it back in the Third Dano-Swedish War in 1657, and they chose this particular time to do this because Sweden was preoccupied with dealing with a conflict in Poland. Of course, there was a lot of victories and losses for Sweden throughout the entire conflicts with Denmark and the country, but of course, this brings us up to number 4, the 30 Years' War. The 30 Years' War was one of the biggest, and is actually considered one of the most destructive wars in human history. It happened in between the years of 1618 and 1648, and pretty much it's like the World War II of that era. It was huge. On one side, you had Sweden, the Dutch, and yes, Denmark and Norway, along with France, England, Saxony, Transylvania, and they were basically called the anti-Habsburg countries, or states. And they were against, obviously, the Habsburg states, which were Austria, the Holy Roman Empire, and yes, even Denmark and Norway fought against Sweden during that time, which was stated earlier, and that was the Torstenson War. Now, the reason they call this one of the most deadliest conflicts is because during that time, there was 8 million people gone off the earth. Of course, of that, they say 94% of those people were from the Imperial Habsburg side. And in the middle of it all, Sweden had contributed 149,000 troops, in which they say about 110,000 of them lost their lives. So yeah, big blow to Sweden. Number 5. Okay, so here's an interesting one. Although, yes, I probably should mention the Kalmar War. One downside is it's another war that Denmark and Sweden fought each other. But did you know that for this number 5, that Sweden and the United States fought together in Africa? This was the first Barbary War, which happened from 1801 to 1802. Of course, it happened a second time around, but Sweden wasn't a part of the second one. To sum it all up, Sweden had been in this conflict since 1800, fighting against the Tripolinian people that were located in Libya. The USA obviously entered in to help fight the piracy that was happening within that region, and the war ended with a Swedish and USA victory with a peace treaty signed. Number 6, the Great Northern War. This one happened from 1700 to 1721, and it was considered World War II of the 18th century. Basically, you had the Swedish Empire, the Dutch, the English, and many others against Russia, Poland, and Denmark. Sweden had a force of approximately 76,000 initially, but by the end of the war, they say they had 200,000 Swedes that lost their lives. However, by the end of the conflict, Sweden alone had managed to defeat August II and his forces of Poland and Lithuania, and Frederick IV of Denmark and his forces. Also keep in mind, Russia and Sweden have had a lot of history of conflict prior to this. There are some wars that I did not include in this list. Number 7, you got the Finnish War of 1808 and 1809. For this conflict, Sweden had at least 36,000 troops that were outnumbered by 95,000 plus troops from Russia, France, and Spain, and yes, Denmark. Unfortunately for Sweden, this one wasn't a good one for the country because they ended up losing, and because of that, Finland was lost to Russia and became the Duchy of Finland. Number 8, we got the Swedish Liberation War, and let's be real, if you didn't have this one in the first place, you wouldn't have Sweden at all. To give you an idea, back in the day, the people of Sweden weren't all too happy how things were going with the Kalmar Union. There were a lot of taxes that were put in place that the Swedes obviously didn't approve of. And eventually, Gustav Vasa, who also had a ship named after him, gathered rebel troops in 1521. As a matter of fact, one of the more pivotal battles was the Battle of Västerås, in which Vasa and his forces ended up capturing a copper mine. After this battle, word got around and people were starting to support this cause even more. And as a matter of fact, this rebellion force became backed by the Stur family, which was one of the top 3 most wealthiest, influential houses of the entire country. Number 9, this is kind of 2 wars in one, theoretically. I'm just going to mention the fact that the Napoleonic War was one of the most important wars in human history. But it was actually after that that really helped shape the country of Norway. Because Sweden was on the winning side and Denmark and Norway were on the losing side, Norway was to cede to Sweden. However, obviously, because of this, the Norwegians didn't really approve of this, and they said, no, we don't want to be part of the Swedes. Sweden, of course, however, retaliated, and this became known as the Campaign in Norway, which happened in 1814. Sweden, of course, had over 45,000 troops against the 30 to 35,000 troops in Norway. And by the end of the war, it's thought that approximately 5,000 troops had been lost on both sides. And because of that, Norway had become its own independent state. And as for Sweden, it became a country that decided that it was going to aim for nothing but neutrality. Number 10, though, it's not over, because 1960 came around and we're talking about the Congo Crisis. Now, although this is not necessarily a war for Sweden, it was a war that it was involved with, but Sweden was more or less peacekeepers. And because of that, still, since 1814, they have never officially declared war on any other country. Apparently, during this entire conflict, the Swedes were in heavy firefights. And there's a bit of an unfortunate story, which I guess didn't get looked into all too much, and that was that the Swedes apparently fired into an open crowd during a conflict. In August of 1961, there was approximately 400 Swedes that were within the country, making this the biggest international task that Sweden faced during the Cold War. By the end of the conflict, there were 40 troops that were injured and 19 lost their lives. There is also a really, really dark story about two certain individuals who their bodies have never been recovered. According to Major Stick von Bayer, he says that 2 Swedes have never been recovered, and this was after 3 Swedes and 3 British officers went on a routine mission and were attacked. But of course, only one of the troops who was Swedish made it out alive, and when they went back the next day, their bodies were never found. And it's kind of theorized that their bodies were eaten. Yeah, pretty gross. Covered up, obviously. So there you have it, guys. That is the top conflicts that Sweden has been involved with. I really hope you guys like this video. And hey, if you guys got any suggestions for future FTD Facts videos, be sure to leave it down there in the comment section below. Also, hit that subscribe button if it's your first time here and you like our content. Or just hit that like button if you like this video. And speaking about liking this video, if you guys want more military stuff, well, I just gonna put it in these cards right here. We got a whole military playlist, because I know a lot of you viewers are probably from Sweden, and you're probably like, I would like more military content. And let's be real, there's not a lot of people making a lot of military content around Sweden, so we've already done the work for you. It's in a nice playlist. So check it out. Other than that, I'm Dave Wapple. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Okay, bye. Okay, guys, here's that playlist that I was telling you about, which actually, by the way, we also just have a playlist on the Cool Country Facts itself. So feel free to pick whichever one you want. But Sweden's awesome. Sweden's great. Love you guys. See you later.